Story time.
Hi, this is Chris Hanver from Serious Squash. You're watching episode 5 of Story Time, and today I'm actually going to talk about how I started Serious Squash and basically what I've done with it since it did start. I graduated from Western 2009, and then I actually got a coaching job coaching in Atlantic Canada in New Brunswick, and during that time I didn't feel like there was a lot of people to coach, and the few that I did, I kind of wanted to make a bigger impact. So when they could go home, there was stuff for them to look at and think about, and some other material for them to kind of look into if they wanted to do more with their squash. And at that time, there wasn't a lot online yet about squash coaching and drills and best practices, and I think that's I just started actually with the blog, so serioussquash.com. Probably 2009, maybe in the fall, maybe 2010 in the winter, can't remember exactly. So it's been like 10, 11 years now that I started that blog. I don't know how many hundreds of posts, but basically just started with a blog for quite a while. I actually had a good friend who designed the logo for me. So the original logo just had like the red, blue, and black, and now obviously I've done some different things with the logo, but it's basically still the same logo that my friend designed for me. And believe it or not, he's a tattoo artist, but he's a really good artist. And so I've had that logo since 2009 or 2010. So since then, I started the blog for a couple of years. Didn't really try to publicize it, or I didn't get into social media for maybe 2-3 years after. And then I started to be like a bit more confident about what I was posting. So I was like, oh, why am I just worried about only helping the kids I'm working with here? Like maybe there's other kids somewhere that don't have a coach and really want this information. Because I know that's what I would have wanted when I was a kid. I would have died to get any tips, any kind of pro matches to watch, anything. And it was very hard back then. It was like the odd actually VHS tape that you'd order for $100, and you'd get it 6 months or a year after the tournament was done, but I'd watch those matches over and over. So I was trying to create some material that people anywhere could watch. So on top of the blog, then I guess the next thing I did was I started to post the blog to Facebook, so Serious Squash Facebook account. And then I remember actually was a bit injured, so I was I couldn't do a lot of training. So when I was on court, I would just solo hit, and sometimes came up with these kind of solo kind of drills or skill challenges. And I had a friend who I remember I don't even know how she saw it, but I posted it somewhere. She's like, oh, that's really good, you should post that on Instagram. And I never really used Instagram much. I had a personal account, and I was like, maybe. So then I threw it on there, and then I was like, oh, this is actually kind of fun. And then I just ended up doing a bunch of different skill challenges. That's kind of how it started. And they had to over 100 of crazy different weird things. And then I was like, okay, well, that's really fun, but I also want to give people good tips and try to be a good coach, and not just what that cool stuff that guy can do. So I started to go and do a bit more of a mixture of some kind of skill challenge and some actually useful solo drills, maybe some different tips, whether it's tactics or training, and then started to get a bit more broad about what I was covering in squash. And that's when I started, I think, posting to YouTube as well. I think around that time I started to get into merch. So that was started just with some shirts. That was probably maybe 5-6 years ago. So I printed, I remember my first batch. If you have those shirts on the back, it says, if you can read this, then I'm winning, or something like that. And then I remember just coming up with that idea. I was like, oh, that's kind of funny and clever for squash, because the person who's in front is generally the one who's winning in squash. So that's where I started a Shopify account and started to sell just shirts, and eventually got in other clothes like hoodies and headbands, yoga mat, you can't see it, but yoga mats. So lots of different types of things, started to brand it a lot more. And then eventually, so I had the blog, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and the online store, and then I guess online store actually shut just in the spring once kind of COVID started, and within a month I'm like, okay, all the squash clubs are closed, no one's playing squash, no one's ordering and stuff, so I'm just gonna close that store. I actually have Serious Squash rackets, which maybe you've seen, that I ordered a year or two ago. So I'm almost out of those. I ordered 40 custom Serious Squash rackets. I think I have about 10 or 12 left, and if you want one, you can just reach out and message me, but I don't do it through the store anymore, but still posting on the blog, still trying to do a lot more YouTube stuff, because I can't actually get on court and do a lot of stuff right now where I would normally want to go in and film either some training or some solo drills, stuff like that. So I'm basically just stuck in my house trying to share some interesting videos and tips. What's the future for Serious Squash? I don't know, maybe you've heard over the summer started, well, I guess maybe late spring, early summer, started to do a podcast, and I think I'm at 10 episodes so far, and kind of got halted a little bit when I had computer problems, but basically it was to kind of pick the brains of other top coaches, and kind of like me getting, like, that's for me personally, like I'm like, hey, I want to be a better coach, I want to interview other top coaches and ask them questions I would find really interesting that I think would be helpful for me as a coach, or even just, you know, curious about my own game as a player, which isn't as important right now in my career, but still always wanting to understand the game more and learn how to coach better, get more out of myself and other people. So that's basically how that started, and I got to 10 episodes. I'll probably just keep doing some more, but won't do them as regularly. Started doing these kind of shorter little mini videos where I'll kind of talk about a certain topic and give you a few tips, or this is just kind of informational, just like the one I did a couple, maybe 2 episodes ago where I said why I didn't play pro squash. I've been asked that a zillion times as well. So I'll probably keep doing these just for fun, just to have a project to do from home. And if you have a topic you're interested in hearing my opinion on, then let me know. Again, future of Serious Squash, I mean, I don't know, squash in general, the future doesn't look too amazing at the moment, but vaccines are getting closer, so maybe there is, you know, some light at the end of the tunnel that we're getting close to. But I'll definitely always be doing something with Serious Squash. I know I have 2 jobs coaching, so I'm going to be very busy, you know, assuming, you know, things are back to normal by the summer next fall. But still always trying to post, so make sure you follow me on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Oh, and I didn't even mention Squash Shots. So that was that's something I started. I'm almost at 100 episodes, so I guess almost 2 years ago now. Basically, I'm posting 1 episode a week on Patreon. And the idea here was when I moved to the Caribbean a year and a half ago, or a little over that. And when I was down there, when I was starting, there was almost nobody playing squash. So I'm like, oh my God, like how am I gonna, you know, what am I gonna do with my time? How am I gonna make a living? I'm like, maybe I can do some more online coaching. I've already done lots of video analysis for people over the years from all over the world, but this time I just thought, like, okay, instead of these, like, you know, I made the secrets of solo hitting and some other instructional videos which I sold on Shopify, but this time I was like, hey, maybe I should just, I'm gonna have the time. Let's just do like a weekly video and keep it short, 1 to kind of 3-4 minutes, and just a new video every single week. And then I've been doing that now for, I think, 90th or 89th or 90th episode is coming out next week. If you're interested in that, you can go to patreon.com/Serious Squash, which is, maybe I can put it right there. Yeah. So getting better at this YouTube thing. I don't know, it's hard to say what Serious Squash is going to be a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. I mean, hard to even know where regular squash and you know, my career is going to be at that point, so it's hard to really know about this, but basically it's just been for fun. You want to share tips, you want to share information with people, but it's also a lot more enjoyable when I'm working on a shirt design, or I'm working on a video and something I find is really interesting, or I'm working on a blog post. I've also done, some of you, maybe you've seen the Serious Squash email list, so if you signed up for that, you would have got a free copy of my sports psychology workbook that I've been working on the last 8-9 months. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode and you learned a little bit about Serious Squash, the history of it, the name. I don't really remember where I came up with the name. I just remember like trying to think of like different names for like a squash company, and somehow that one just like stuck. And you know, I didn't know what I wanted to do with it at the beginning, but I just remember like buying the domain, the email address, and then getting, that was even, you know, probably 6 months or a year before I even got the blog up. I just knew I wanted to do something more on top of just being in the club and coaching. I think you can reach a much broader audience, which obviously I have, and I've met people all around the world. You know, it's amazing when I get to see somebody who's like post a video online and they're wearing like a Serious Squash shirt, or they're using a Serious Squash racket, and they're like, you know, miles and miles away in different country, maybe in different parts of Canada. So I think that's really cool and really fun. So that's really, basically been my journey so far, and it's been about 11-ish years or so and counting, and hopefully the next 11-ish years or so will be even better for Serious Squash, and trying to branch out these different areas, and then doing stuff that I think is fun. And obviously that's why I've done so many different things with kind of Serious Squash branding, and I'm sure I'll continue to do that moving forward. So that's it for episode 5 of Storytime, about the history of Serious Squash and a little bit about the current and future of Serious Squash.